Welcome back. This is the second part for the data warehousing case study and demo applications videos. So, in this one, we are going to look at how we can use a tool such as Apache Nifi to basically build the ETL pipeline. So, in the last video, and which was about the first use case demo application, we saw how we can use Python scripts or basically code to run different segments of the data ingestion pipeline. So we can have one stage for ingesting data from the source to the bronze layer, a transform script to move data from the bronze to the silver layer, and finally a load layer which performs some business logic operations, aggregations, groupings, and joins over the silver layer to move data into the gold layer. So now we are going to see how we can achieve the same effect through tools like Apache Nifi. So once again, I'm going to use Docker to set up the project. In the GitHub repo, you can go to the customer support lakehouse directory, inside which you will find the Docker compose file. And once again, we'll start by running Docker compose up -d in the background. Again, when you run this command initially for the first time, it will take some time. Now that we have our services running, we can go through this setup.md file, the markdown readme that I've created. So we'll go down and you'll find the link to access Nifi, Apache Nifi here. So we go to that. So just go to advanced if you get this error. So there's a service running on your local host and it runs on HTTPS. That is why this warning is coming here. So just go to advanced, click on continue to localhost. The credentials are specified in the Docker file itself. So the user is admin and the password is admin, admin, admin three times. And you click on login. If you want to see the credentials, you can see them here in the Docker compose file under the service for Apache Nifi. The username is admin and the password is admin, admin, admin. So this project is slightly different from the first one in terms of how we are storing the data. So there is a very popular platform called Databricks, which has this concept of storing data as delta tables. So the way they work is they store data in this format called Parquet files, and the actual data is stored inside Parquet files, but they also maintain something which is known as delta logs. So whenever you run a query or you perform any operation on your data, the Databricks platform will update the Parquet files. It will not, sorry. So whenever you run a query or perform certain operations on your database, the Databricks platform would create a new Parquet file and store data there. It will also create a new log file. So the log file will basically have information about how you have interacted with the data, what kind of modifications you have made. So when next time you're querying your data, so when you're using a select statement, let's say, what will happen is Databricks will first look through these log files, which are easier to scan through compared to the very large Parquet files which store the actual data. It will identify what Parquet files it needs to go through and only go through those Parquet files, hence speeding up the lookup operation. So Databricks is not free to use, or at least I could not find a simple way to use it for free. So, but in order to demonstrate this notion of logs and Parquet files, I have sort of simulated that entire idea here in this project. So, okay, we'll go to the Nifi page back here in our browser. Okay, so we'll go back to this Nifi page back in our browser. Okay, so I'll be going over how you can set up Nifi and basically build your pipeline now. This video will not cover everything which was covered in the last video, so as to keep the demo videos shorter. This will only focus on the part which is different, which is the Nifi pipeline setup itself. So if you go through the README, you'll find the instructions here. So this is sort of the overall flow we're trying to achieve in our pipeline. So you see here, get file is basically the initial ingest stage where you have a source or a source file, let's say, and you load it into your raw store, the bronze layer. You can then have multiple steps for converting, transforming the records in your data, and finally a put file step to sort of put the data in a destination, which in our case would be considered as the gold layer. So the first step is to create a process group. So you can go back to Nifi, and here you'll find an option to create a process group. You click on it or you drag it onto your canvas. You can name it anything. We'll just stick to the names in the README file for now. So here we have our process group created. You double click it to enter the process group. So now we are inside the landing to bronze process group. Now going back to the README file, we will now be adding the services to build this particular stage of our pipeline. So I have some sample data here in landing. So these are very small data files. Sorry. Yeah. So first we'll be creating a CSV reader. So I click on processor, drag one down here. You can filter it to show. Okay, what's it called? You can choose the get file one. I'll just quickly update the readme as well. So this should double click it to configure it. You go to properties. So there are certain properties you can modify. So here we list the properties. The input directory should be slash data slash landing. Just copy that. Double click again, go to properties, input directory, set the value as slash data slash landing. For this demo, I'll just keep the source file attribute as true. So that means once this particular processor is done reading the source CSV file, do you want to keep the file or remove it? Uh, for the purposes of this demo, we'll be keeping it. I'll update the README here to be in accordance to that. We'll then add a second processor. This is the convert record. We have our second processor here. Once again, there are some properties that we need to set. This we will create a new service, CSV reader. CSV reader. All right. schema access should be in first schema and first line is header 2. Record writer, again we'll create a new service. This should be this one right here. Create. So yeah, that should be it. Apply. So we have two processors ready, and then the final one is a query record processor. So just drag a third one here. So we build this query record processor here and add properties for name and value. So name is transform tickets. So once you are here in properties, you can click this plus icon to add a new property and adding the value here as well. So we'll just query this SQL statement. Yeah, so that should be it. We'll click on apply. Next, we will have two more processors, update attribute and put file. So, okay, let's zoom out here. This would be update attribute. So these are the two properties that we need to set for update attribute. So I'll double click on it, go to properties, set table tickets. So I've added a property called table with the value tickets, and I'll also have a property called out underscore dir, and I'll set it to this path value. I click on apply. So I'll just rearrange these a little, and finally I'll add another processor for put file. So this is what basically writes the file to the destination, and again double click on it and set the correct properties. So the directory should be reference to the out dir property we set in the last pipeline stage. So I'll just put that value here, and conflict resolution set to replace. I click on apply. Now I have to connect the processors. So this is the ordering in which we are supposed to connect the processors. So to connect two processors, you can simply drag this arrow here, join them. So for now, you can just let these be the default values. For relationship success. So this relationship option here is basically what kind of a behavior should you expect when the pipeline runs successfully or when the pipeline fails. So for now, we'll only consider the success stage. One thing I would like to mention here is that Nifi provides you with this notion of a funnel. So if you have funnels, what you can do basically is you can redirect your failures here and then ideally have another put file processor somewhere which will log all the errors, let's say. So it will write information about all errors you encounter in a separate location for you to review later. So that's also something which is possible through Apache Nifi. I'll just connect the remaining blocks as well. So for this, I'll just select transform tickets, and finally the last one. Yeah. So there we go. Now all our blocks are connected. Now when we're starting the pipeline, we should first start the last stage. So like let's say we start the first stage as the initial stage. What would happen is by the time we are starting the subsequent stages, there would be this build-up of information in the initial stage, right? So we want to avoid that. So we want to have the downstream stages already ready to receive our data. So that's why we'll click on put file, and we'll use this run button here to start it. Okay, so it says, it gives me a warning, so we'll just resolve that quickly. We'll go to relationships. So basically we have our put file processor as our last processor, so there are two relationships there, failure and success, but we are not going to define any behavior on them, so we can just select terminate for both. Click on apply. Select put file again, and click on the run button. So now put file is running. We'll go on update attribute, click on the run button. Now update attribute is running, and so on. We'll keep going upstream and starting all uh, the tasks. Okay, so we want to create two new controller services. We go here to these additional options, click on controller settings, uh, go to this tab for management controller services, or yeah, controller services. Click on this plus button here, add one for CSV reader. Click on this settings wheel here, go to properties, and configure the properties according to what is specified in the readme file. So schema access should be infer schema. Yeah, so this is correct, and first line is header should be true. So apply. We'll just rename this so that it becomes easier to refer to later. Similarly, we'll create another service for Parquet set record writer, and configure its properties according to what is given in the readme file. I'll just rename it to Parquet set record writer 1. Compression to be snappy. I enable both of these. I'll just choose the scope as service and referencing components so that we don't run into any issues for this demo. Yeah. Okay, so there were some issues in the configuration here in the README file which I had added earlier. So I'll fix these issues in the README file and upload the correct version to the GitHub repo, after which you can follow along. So basically, once you have all the configuration set up, you can run the entire process group at once. So all the processes are now running, and if you look closely, you can see that data is being read and written from the first one into the second one down to the third one as well. So this has some input and some output, and then the put file stage is also there. So this is what is finally writing all the files. So if you go to VS Code, I'll just stop this process as well. If you go to VS Code, you can see the written files for today's date. So the ingest layer is now working, and then similarly you can go on and build the silver layer and the gold layer as well.